Good evening, dear traveler of time. Tonight let the heaviness of the day slide from your shoulders. The winds that once pressed at your windows now soften to a hush. Beyond your thoughts, past the veil of sleep, lies an older world, untouched by machines or memory. A world where voices echo through glens, where stone and heather remember everything. Close your eyes gently now. The world dims around you, and in its place, mist rises from a quiet Scottish valley. The air is cool, still, and you are here, not to fight, not to flee, only to walk slowly through the hush of history. You wake in the soft breath of a Highland morning, wrapped in the gray folds of fog that cling to the land like old wool. You do not yet know your name, but your feet find the earth beneath you, uneven, moss-soft, and speckled with dew. All around the hills rise like sleeping giants, ancient and unmoved. There is no sound of horses or wheels, only the distant call of curlews and the faint crackle of burning peat from a far-off croft. Beneath your hand, a low stone wall, half-crumbled, stretches like a spine along the edge of a path once used by countless boots and bare feet. You follow it not for purpose, but for peace. Each step carries you deeper into the forgotten. A brook winds beside you now, narrow and fast, chattering over worn rocks. You crouch and touch the water. It is cold, not painfully so, but with a clarity that startles the skin and sharpens your breath. Across the stream, a grove of Scots pine leans with the wind, their trunks tall and thin, bark peeling in red slivers.
Ow.
The scent of resin drifts faintly on the air, clean, sweet, and sharp. Somewhere among the trees a deer stirs. It does not flee, only watches. In this land, everything watches. You feel it in the hush between bird calls, and the weight of stone underfoot. Even the ground seems to hold memory of footsteps, perhaps, or of stories told and retold around quiet fires. You pass into a glen, its slopes soft with heather, its silence deeper than before. Here the wind moves low and slow, pressing the tall grasses in sighs. You notice the remains of a turf longhouse, its outline barely visible, half swallowed by time. A single standing stone remains nearby, upright, flecked with lichen. You run your fingers along its rough surface. It is older than the clans. It's older than the saints. A relic from a people whose names are lost, but whose marks remain. Some say such stones were set to honor the dead. Others say they were offerings to gods older than books. You do not choose between stories. You simply listen. Let them pass through you like mist. Further up the slope, you find signs of life, recent and alive, yet deeply woven into the past. A cluster of round huts circles a fire pit, smoke rising in lazy coils. Sheep wander near the edges, their bells faint but steady. A woman stoops near a cooking pot, and two children carry water in sloshing clay jugs. They do not look your way, yet you feel as though you've always belonged here, like a cousin returned after long absence. In the quiet routine of their movements, there is no rush, no performance, only the rhythm of necessity. Here, days are built not on ambition, but on what the earth allows. Warmth, food, shelter. You feel your own breath slow to match their pace. The air thickens with peat smoke now, mixed with the scent of barley mash from a nearby barn. You follow the smell and step inside. The barn is dark, warm, earthen. Barrels are stacked beside woven baskets of root vegetables and bundles of herbs hung from rafters. A man stirs a vat slowly with a wooden paddle, his face ruddy, brows thick. He hums, a low, tuneless murmur that comforts more than it entertains. This is how ale is made. This is how winter is endured. As you linger, you notice tools, scythes, flails, looms, each worn well used, shaped by hands that rarely paused. These are the instruments of survival. There is no glory in them, but there is meaning. Outside again, clouds have gathered. The hills darken to deep slate, and the wind takes on a sharper edge. You wrap a woolen cloak tighter, feeling the coarse weave brush against your skin. In the distance, a group of men gather near a cairn. Not mourning, not praying, simply talking, sharing. You hear fragments. Land, cattle, weather, kin, no shouts, no boasts. Just the careful conversation of a people who know the weight of silence. The clans here are not always at war. Sometimes they simply endure. and enduring too becomes a kind of strength. Night approaches slowly, and with it the hush of fires lit and doors closed. You find yourself near the edge of a loch now, its waters dark and glass still. The surface reflects the first stars, sharp and trembling. You sit on a boulder and watch as the wind begins to scatter the sky's reflection. Frogs chirp softly in the reeds. A lone gull cries out and then falls silent. You close your eyes, and for a long while nothing moves, nothing demands. You are simply here, a witness to the slow unfolding of a world that no longer asks to be remembered, but still, gently is. Before the night fully falls, you walk once more, just far enough to find a narrow path leading toward an old kirk. Its roof is partly caved, its walls wrapped in ivy. A bell, cracked and rusted, still hangs from a low timber. You do not enter, but you place your hand on the door. Beneath your fingers, the wood is soft with age. Generations have passed here, knelt, prayed, married, mourned. The structure is forgotten by time, but not by presence. You feel it. The way you feel a melody long after it fades, a stillness that comforts, not from answers, but from the absence of need. And now, as the final light slips below the hills, you find a place to rest. A hollow in the hillside, soft with bracken and moss. You lie down, and the earth seems to welcome you, wrapping you in scent and silence. Above, the stars continue their slow, ancient procession, unmoved by the stories below, yet somehow always part of them. The air is cool, the dark complete, and you are not alone. The land remembers. The stone remembers. And as your breath deepens, the highlands settle into their long night, dreaming as they have for centuries. The heat from the hearth still clings to your skin, though the fire has burned low. Ash settles over blackened logs as the quiet deepens around you. Outside, the mist has risen once more, curling around the thatched roof like a protective veil. The village behind you is asleep. A few scattered huts, a stone cross, the slow bleat of sheep echoing in the valley. But ahead, high on the ridge, a shape moves in the fog. It is not a ghost, though the land is full of them. It is a man upright, deliberate, wrapped in a heavy tartan that trails behind like a second shadow. This is a chief, and tonight you walk in his footsteps. He stands with his back to the wind, hands clasped behind him, watching the path that curves toward the river. Behind him rise the raw stones of a hill fort, its walls thick with moss and memory. You don't know his name yet, but you know his presence, the way the wind bends around him, the way silence seems to wait for his command. His people are his charge. Warriors, farmers, weavers, herders, they are not many, but they are his, bound by blood and vow and something older than either. The chief is not just a man. He is a living thread in the tapestry of the clan, woven with pride, duty, and the weight of those who came before. Below the ridge, you follow a narrow path that cuts through gorse and bracken. The light changes as you move, clouds breaking to reveal slivers of moonlight across the moor. You reach a clearing, flat wide, ringed by stones. In the center stands a wooden pole, carved with symbols that weather has half-erased. A banner hangs limp against it, but the cloth is unmistakable, deep red, embroidered with black and ochre, bearing the sigil of the clan. This is no idle decoration, it is the heart of identity. This banner has led men into battle and watched over births, marriages, and funerals. It has been soaked in rain and blood, lifted in triumph and folded in mourning. You touch the fabric gently. It is heavier than it seems. The chief's hall sits further up the hill, long, narrow, and built, with timbers darkened by age and smoke. Inside, the scent of wood smoke and mutton clings to everything. Antlers hang from the rafters, and a wolf's pelt lies at the foot of the hearth. You see him again, seated now on a carved wooden chair, wide and low. He speaks with a calm that expects obedience. But there is no cruelty in him, only the gravity of someone who knows that leadership is not a crown, but a burden. Around him sit his closest, an old advisor with clouded eyes, warrior missing 3 fingers, a young boy whose eyes never leave the chief's hands. You watch them in silence. They are not discussing war. They're deciding how to survive the coming winter. For a moment, you drift. Not from sleep, but from thought. You imagine what it means to lead a clan when the law is distant and the land is near? When justice is something forged from memory and mud? The chief must know every family, every feud, every boundary stone and buried grudge. He must remember debts unpaid, oaths whispered over wine, and promises carved into trees. His word is peace or war. But he cannot afford arrogance. In these lands, a leader who grows proud may find his kin vanish into another banner's shadow. The people follow not because they are commanded, but because they believe, and belief is a fragile thing. A young man enters the hall, carrying a leather pouch. He kneels and pours out its contents. Small stones, each marked with a different clan symbol. This is the game of bonds, a ritual older than parchment, where chiefs agree to alliances by casting their stones together in a shallow bowl of water. You watch as the old advisor selects two, places them side by side. A silence follows, not of confusion, but of reflection. The decision is not about wealth or pride. It is about survival, about who can be trusted to send warriors when the river floods or when cattle go missing. These stones are not playthings. They are the memory of land, of loyalty, of history shaped by hands now gone. Night deepens, and the air turns sharper. You step outside again. Somewhere in the trees, an owl cries. You make your way down the slope, feet sinking into wet moss, toward a smaller dwelling where women sit in a half circle, spinning wool by firelight. Their chatter is quiet, rhythmic, like the wheel that turns between their hands. They speak of the chief's decisions, of the boy who will soon foster with another clan, of the woman whose marriage will end a decades-old blood feud. These are not idle tales. They are threads in the greater weave. In this world, a girl's wedding can stop a war. A boy's new surname can bind hills that once burned. You sit among them for a moment. You feel the peace in their motion, the history in their hands. Beside the hearth, a woman lays out a piece of embroidered linen. At its center is the symbol of the clan stitched in red wool. Around it, circles of oak leaves, deer, hounds, thistles. A living history, told in thread and silence. We remember through this, she might say, though her voice is never raised. This cloth will be placed on a newborn's cradle, or wrapped around a blade given to a son when he comes of age. It is not just decoration, it is story. One you are now part of, if only briefly. Dawn is slow to come. The firelight gives way to gray, and mist lingers stubbornly across the glen. The chief walks again, this time alone. He stops near a cairn where the bones of his father lie, marked with a circle of standing stones. He kneels, not in sorrow, but in continuity. The clan does not mourn loudly, worn, quiet, enduring. He places a small branch of rohan across the stones, a gesture of protection. Then he rises, not taller, but steadier. A new day has begun, and his people will look to him to meet it. You stand at the edge of the path, watching the smoke rise again from the chief's hall. You think of the banner in the clearing, still damp with morning dew. You wonder how many stories it holds, how many voices it has heard, how many names it has outlived. Perhaps you've been one of them once, perhaps not. But as you turn away, you feel its weight still in your memory, a quiet vow stitched into cloth, not to conquer, but to endure. A low wind sighs through the valley, pulling loose strands of cloud across the sky like soft wool. The earth feels damp beneath your boots, not with rain, but with yesterday's dew that refuses to lift. Overhead, the sky is neither dark nor bright, just a still, colorless gray that settles gently over everything. Somewhere far behind you, a blackbird calls, and ahead, the trees begin to thin, revealing the wide clearing where the people gather. Not for war, not for mourning, but for something older. Celebration. It's not grand, not loud, but real. You step into the circle quietly, and no one turns. You are simply meant to be here. The glen is encircled by low stone walls, and the scent of wood smoke and honeyed oats drifts lazily from the central fire. A great spit turns slowly above the coals, the meat crackling as fat drips and sizzles. Children dart between woven baskets piled with root vegetables, while women knead dough on broad wooden slabs, their fingers dusted with flour and ash. An old man plays a reedy pipe in the corner, its melody simple and winding, like the burn that runs beside the clearing. No one claps, no one shouts, but the music coils through the air like incense, sweet and lingering, drawn from memory more than skill. Near the edge of the gathering, you find a small table laid not with food, but with tools, carved wooden spoons, bone-handled knives, simple cups and bowls made of horn and clay. The young boy sits beside it, shaping a drinking vessel from soft black clay, his brow furrowed, tongue poking slightly from the corner of his mouth. He does not notice you. His hands move with care, turning the cup slowly in the curve of his palm. These are not goods to be traded. They're gifts, offerings for the feast. Each item has a name carved into its base, written in the looping Gaelic script that few still read. Perhaps the cup will be given to a cousin. Perhaps it will be left beneath the trees as tribute to something older. You wonder if the boy knows which. The glen itself carries its own memory. Older than this generation, older even than the clan. The flat stone at its center is worn smooth from centuries of gatherings. In some seasons, it serves as altar, in others as table. And sometimes, when songs swell late into the night as a stage, you run your fingers across it now. The surface is warm from the fire, but beneath it holds the cold patience of ancient things. A lichen-edged notch runs along one side, deep enough to suggest a groove worn by use, perhaps from sharpening blades, or from the repeated sweep of a blade cutting meat in years past. You wonder if the first hand to touch it would recognize yours. The music changes, the pipe giving way to a dulcimer's distant rhythm, struck softly by a woman in a blue tunic embroidered with thistles. The melody is slower now, almost meditative. Around her, people begin to sit. Rough-woven blankets are unrolled. Clay cups pass from hand to hand. The feast does not begin with words or blessing, but with presence. With enough food for each hand, enough fire for each face. No one eats until the elder woman nods, her white braids bound with leather cord. She lifts a carved horn cup, filled with something dark and sweet, and says, "Only from the earth." And then they begin. The food is simple: roasted lamb, boiled barley, wild leeks and onions. The bread is rough but warm, cut with a blade passed from lap to lap. You are handed a piece and nod in thanks. The woman beside you tears hers in half and places one piece in her satchel. For later, perhaps, or for someone not here. There are no guests at this table. Only kin. And kin means more than blood. It means those who carry the same burdens, speak the same songs, remember the same stories. You feel it now. Not as obligation, but as shelter. As the eating slows, the talking begins. Not in a rush, not as debate, but in soft exchanges carried between sips of ale and spoonfuls of stew. One man tells of a journey to the Western Isles, where he saw sea eagles wheel above black cliffs. A woman beside him recounts a birth, a baby girl born in the middle of winter, wrapped in sealskin to keep her warm. An elder murmurs something about a dream, a warning, or a memory. It's unclear, and the group listens without interruption. These are not tales for entertainment. They are offerings, like the cups and the food. Every few minutes, a small bell is struck. Just once. A boy, no older than 10, walks slowly around the perimeter of the feast, carrying a small iron bell that once belonged to a church, now buried beneath heather and fern. He rings it not to call attention, but to remind that all of this, the food, the stories, the land, exists because people chose to hold it close, even when it tried to slip away. He passes you and the sound shivers through your bones, not sharp, not loud, but steady. You wonder what the bell remembers? Later a man stands, tall, red-haired, with a long plaid draped over one shoulder. He holds a carved staff marked with ash symbols. Not a chief, not tonight, but a bard. His voice is deep, but he speaks low, and the glen quiets like a blanket pulled tight. He tells of an old winter when the cattle froze where they stood, and the people carved through the snow with shovels of bone. He speaks of the woman who walked 3 days to bring dried fish to her brother's children. He tells of a spirit who appeared as a stag and guided the lost back to their fires. None of it is written. All of it is remembered. Close your eyes for a moment, not in sleep, but in stillness. The smell of smoke and stew clings to your clothes. Your fingers are sticky with honey, and your throat is warm from the sweetness of fermented oat beer. You listen as the dulcimer starts again, and voices hum along. Not lyrics, just sound. A slow weaving of breath and tone. Someone begins a line, another joins. No one leads. The melody gathers and drifts like smoke. You find yourself humming too without realizing. And it feels not like singing, but like remembering something you didn't know you'd forgotten. A few people rise to dance, slow, deliberate movements, more like walking than performance. Arms held low, feet tapping gently in time with the dulcimer. It is not for show, it is for rhythm, for memory. The circle turns, and faces flicker in firelight. Laughing, frowning, blinking sleepily. You do not dance. You only watch. And yet you feel yourself moving anyway. Not your body, but something quieter inside you. Something that hears the rhythm and replies with stillness. The fire is low now, and the stars have returned. Above, the sky has cleared to a wide, infinite black, pierced with pinpricks of cold light. Someone adds the last log to the coals. Someone else hums the final note of a song. And slowly, without instruction, the gathering begins to fade. Not all at once, not abruptly, but in gentle pairs and quiet steps, back toward huts and beds and the waiting silence of night. You remain for a moment longer, beside the stone, beside the coals. The smoke curls upward and disappears. Before you leave, you reach down and brush the edge of the flat stone once more. The ash coats your fingertips, gray, soft, faintly warm. You rub it between your fingers. It smells like cedar and salt, like stories. You wonder, as you walk away, if the people who first feasted here 100 winters ago, or more, ever imagined someone like you, someone not of their world, but listening still. The thought lingers, like smoke in wool. The frost lies thick upon the heather this morning. Pale and silent, it coats every branch, every blade of grass, every stone on the hillside. The sun is slow to rise, and when it does, it casts a dull amber glow across the valley. Not warmth exactly, but notice. You walk carefully down a narrow trail where hoofprints have frozen in the mud from the night before. They are fresh, too fresh. A trail that leads not home, but away, over the ridge and into uncertain territory. The air feels different today, still hushed, still slow, but edged with something sharper. Not fear, not yet, but possibility. You'll hear it before you see it. The lowing of cattle, confused and unsettled. Then a second sound, quick clipped footfalls on frozen ground. You step behind a twisted birch and crouch low. Across the field, shadows move swiftly among the rocks. 12 men at most, their tartans dark and rough, blades strapped to their backs, leading a group of stolen cattle up toward the high pass. They do not shout, they do not run. They know this land too well to be careless. This is not chaos. This is ritual. Cattle raids are older than kings in these lands. It's older than parchment, older even than stone forts. A test of skill, a game of survival, a declaration without words. One clan crosses into another's grazing land and takes what it can, not always in anger, but often in answer. A missing sheep, a broken fence, an insult passed in whispers. The reavers are not cruel, but they are exacting. In the cold logic of highland life, cattle is wealth. To raid is not just theft, it is power reclaimed. You watch as they guide the animals upward, their breath rising like ghosts. They do not look back. You shift now, away from the trail, back into the woods where a line of young men crouch, hidden in fern and frost. Their chief's son among them, his face smudged with ash, his eyes sharp and still. This is his first defense. He does not tremble. He waits. A scout returns, small, quick, his cloak still damp from river mist, and whispers something in the boy's ear. A choice is made silently. No horn is blown, no banner raised. They move in a slow ripple through the trees, blades drawn, eyes forward. Not to slaughter, to reclaim. That is the rule. That is the rhythm of old feuds. Further down the slope, you find the cattle's trail again. Their wide, nervous prints weave through a narrow ravine where the air is colder still, untouched by sun. Here among the frozen ferns lies a single broken brooch, its pins snapped, its silverwork dulled with dirt. Someone lost it in the rush, perhaps a herdsman, perhaps a raider. You pick it up. It bears the shape of a stag, carved in delicate arcs, the antlers looping into a Celtic knot. You wonder if the one who lost it will return to look. Or if centuries from now, someone else will find it and wonder the same about you. The battle, when it comes, is not loud, it is quick. A rustle in the brush, a startled cry, the dull thud of bodies clashing in cold bracken. The cattle scatter, a blade strikes a rock. A man curses under his breath. One reaver is caught, another disappears into the trees. The rest retreat, their prize lost, but their pride intact for now. No one dies. Not today. That, too, is part of the ritual. Just enough to send a message. Just enough to balance the scales. The chief's son stands over the fallen brooch and stares at it for a long moment. He does not pick it up, simply turns away, and the men follow him back to the village. Hours pass. You return to the glen. The cattle have wandered back on their own, their breath steaming in the dusklight, hooves caked with mud and frost. A woman tends to a wounded herdsman, wrapping linen tightly around a gashed arm. He winces but does not complain. This is not his first raid, likely not his last. Round the fire voices are low, not triumphant, not bitter, just steady. This too is part of life. The raid will be answered. Not today, perhaps not this season. But one day, another trail of hooves will cut across another hillside. And the story will begin again. A boy sits apart from the fire, carving something into a piece of driftwood with a dull knife. You walk past him slowly and glance down. He is etched a shape into the wood. A cow, standing beside a tree, with little lines for hoof prints and grass. His hands are cold, but steady. You wonder what story he'll tell when he's grown. Whether he'll remember today as victory or warning. Whether the act of watching, just watching, will shape his future more than any blade could. His mother calls him softly, and he leaves the carving behind. You pick it up. It smells faintly of smoke and pine sap. Later, long after the smoke has thinned into the night, you climb once more toward the high pass where the raid began. You pass stones marked with ancient runes, some half buried, some still standing, not to name victories, but to remember presence. This land does not record conquest. It remembers movement. A path taken, a circle walked, a boundary crossed. You reach a ridge where the stars are sharp above you, and the earth below fades into shadow. You wonder briefly if the raiders reached shelter, if they sit now in their own village retelling the tale from their side, their laughter soft behind shuttered windows. Wind brushes your face like a question. Do these men, raider or defender, dream of you, too? Does someone, centuries from now, hear your footfall in the leaves and wonder if you carried a blade or a bell? The thought fades, like breath in winter. You turn back toward the valley. The night is long, but the trail is familiar. The brooch still rests in your palm. Oh, the story still warm. The bells begin before dawn, not loud, not joyful, but with a dull, measured weight, echoing across the frost-bitten fields like slow heartbeats. They toll not to welcome, but to warn. The church is waking, and with it, a world of parchment, robes, and rules that reach farther than any clan's boundary. You stand in the half-light, watching as mist coils around a small stone chapel at the edge of the glen. Its walls low, its steeple crooked. Yet it holds a gravity that outlives storms and time. It's not because it is holy, but because it is believed. The priest emerges slowly from within, a narrow man wrapped in wool and layered linen, his eyes pale, his beard streaked with the yellow of pipe smoke. He does not speak. His breath clouds the air as he turns toward the stone path leading down to the village. You follow from a distance, your footsteps muffled by moss. Around you, the birds have stilled. Even the sheep do not bleat. The morning belongs to silence. The priest walks not with haste, but with certainty. He does not need to raise his voice. His authority is older than memory. At the foot of the path stands a stone cross, weathered, pitted, stained with lichen. Not ornamental, not ornate, just there. You stop beside it and feel the chill of the stone seep into your palm. On its face, faint etchings remain. Latin script, curling vines, a dove with wings outstretched. Symbols of a language that came with conquerors and cloisters, washing over older gods like slow floodwater. You think of the brooch from days before, the stag etched in Celtic curves. How different were the hands that carved each one. They believed their truths would last longer than the stones that held them. In the village, a child is pulled by the hand toward the chapel. He does not struggle, but he drags his feet. His mother walks ahead, her head bowed, lips moving in silent repetition. Today is not a festival. And though the boy has done little, a broken cup perhaps, or an impolite word, the weight of judgment is already pressed into his small shoulders. The priest waits at the door, and one by one the villagers file in. You do not follow. Instead, you circle to the side, to where the graveyard leans into the slope like a tilted mouth. The stones here are uneven. Some carved, some plain, some marked only by a single cross or a handful of pebbles laid with care. One grave bears the symbol of a lamb, another a circle broken in half, the sign of a sinner buried without blessing. In this place, the church's justice is slow but permanent. Mercy, when it comes, arrives too late. Later you return to the chapel's rear, where the priest tends a small garden of bitter herbs. Angelica, rue, wormwood, not for flavor, for penance. He hums as he works, a low monotone chant with no clear beginning or end. His fingers are calloused, not from prayer, but from pruning. Inside the chapel, the air smells of cold wax and mildew. A crucifix hangs crooked above the altar, and beside it, a rusted iron censer swings slightly in the wind, though no incense burns. The candles flicker weakly, their flames fighting the damp. On a side table rests a wooden box bound in leather, its latch worn silver. The priest opens it gently and lifts out a long strip of parchment. A record of names, sins, tithes. One woman's name appears 10 times, once each month since spring. Each time, the same notation, withheld grain, another name followed by the phrase, spoke against the steward. The ink is thin, the judgment is not. You wonder what the priest thinks as he writes, whether his hand hesitates, whether he ever crosses a name out before the ink dries. Outside again the village has shifted. Men return to their tools, women to their looms. But a hush still lingers. Not silence exactly, but a thinning of sound, like music stopped mid-note. You pass by a group of children gathered near a low wall, drawing in the dirt with sticks. One girl draws a circle around a smaller dot. A sun, maybe. She does not argue. She draws again, a bird this time, with wings wide and unblinking. He says nothing. The line remains. You follow a different path now, one that leads up a rocky incline to a crumbling tower, once part of a monastery. A seraph, perhaps, or a saint's robe. The rest has fallen. The sun, passing through that shard of glass, throws a single ribbon of color across the stone floor. You kneel in its path, not to pray, just to feel the light. Not far from the ruin lies a spring, ringed in stones blackened by lichen and moss. The water is still, and the basin smells of iron and fern. Offerings line its edge. Coins, strips of wool, a crust of bread wrapped in linen. You sit beside it and lower your fingers into the water. Cold, pure, untouched. You wonder how many lips have tasted this spring. How many knees bent here? Not for confession, but for comfort. Perhaps the church tried to claim it. Perhaps it simply endured. Some things do. Night has begun to fall again, and the mist thickens in the folds of the hills. The bells do not ring this time. There is no mass tonight, only silence. In the chapel, the priest lights a single taper and places it in the window. A gesture not of invitation, but of watchfulness. You walk past it slowly, your reflection flickering in the cold glass. The flame is small, but it burns, not fiercely, but without apology. You pause near the stone cross once more. The frost returns in delicate webs across the grass, and a heron calls out across the loch, its voice low and long and full of something ancient. The church may write its laws, it may chisel its names into stone, but the loch, the frost, the birds, they do not bow. They endure beside it, not against it. It's just beside. As you walk away, the sound of your footfalls returns slowly, like a rhythm remembered after silence. The village grows smaller behind you. The light from the chapel dims, and ahead, the hills stretch wide and soft beneath a sky that forgets. Whether watched or forgiven, you continue onward, not to escape judgment, but to drift into something quieter, something your own. The wind moves differently today, not stronger, not colder, just changed, like a tune played in a slower key. You stand on a low ridge above the village, where the moss grows thick along the stones, and the heather leans in crooked tufts. Below, thin threads of smoke rise from the chimneys, but they drift sideways, hesitating before lifting toward the sky. The sheep are quiet. Even the dogs, usually restless near dawn, lie still at the edge of their kennels. There's no clear alarm, no cry or bell, only a silence that presses down from the hills like a hand. You feel it behind your ribs. A stillness to complete. Someone has shuttered the chapel windows. A dark cloth hangs over the carved cross by the gate, fluttering gently in the breeze. In the village square, a barrel of water stands untouched. A woman you recognize from the weaving circle steps out of her hut, holding a bundle wrapped in linen. She does not look around. She walks with slow, heavy care to the edge of the glen, places the bundle in a hollow between two stones, and walks away again. You do not follow her. You only step closer and see what she left. Not food, not herbs, but clothing, children's clothing, small, scorched at the edges. You do not touch it. They say it began in the port town, sailor perhaps, or a cart of damp grain. The details shift with each telling like smoke through the trees, but the truth has already arrived. Cough in the night, a fever that won't cool. Black spots that bloom like spilled ink on the skin. The village does not speak the word aloud, but everyone knows it. Pestilence. The kind that moves like wind and waits in straw. The kind that does not ask permission. The kind that remembers how to find the small, and the kind, and the very old. You glance toward the healer's hut. Its door stands open. A fresh rowan branch has been nailed above the lintel, a ward or a farewell. You shift your steps, walking away from the village now, toward the edge of the forest where the ground softens and the trees crowd close. There, beside the river, a small lean-to has been built of pine boughs and old thatch. Isolation, a place for the sick who do not wish to spread their breath. Inside, the shape of a man lies beneath a woolen blanket, unmoving. A clay cup stands beside him, filled with water and steeped willow bark. The cup is cracked along one side. Someone left it carefully, all the same. You kneel by the entrance, not close enough to disturb, but near enough to feel the weight of the air. It smells of mint and old leather and something else, a heaviness without scent. He moves, just barely. One hand shifts from beneath the blanket, fingers curling, uncurling. You stay very still. His eyes do not open, but his mouth does. Not to speak, only to breathe. It is shallow, like wind through reeds. You wonder who waits for him. Whether someone checks the cup at dusk, or places fresh herbs at the doorway. Whether he knows his name is still spoken, softly, when the sun sets and the children are counted. You do not ask. Only bow your head and leave a sprig of juniper on the threshold. A little farther along the river, the trees open to a clearing where 3 women stand in a circle, heads bowed, hands clasped in front of them. They say nothing. Between them burns a low fire, more smoke than flame, and atop it rests a shallow iron pan filled with coals and herbs. Age mugwort, pine needles. The scent clings to your throat. One woman steps forward and scatters something into the smoke. Oats crushed and dry. A gesture of cleansing, of caution. You've heard of these rites before? Not pagan, not Christian, just old? The kind that linger in the cracks between faiths, where fear gathers like dew? You stand in silence with them. No one speaks. On the path back, you pass a child's toy. A figure carved of driftwood, worn smooth by time. It lies near the fence, half buried in straw. The limbs are jointed, the face carefully notched with shallow eyes and a smiling mouth. You wonder if the child who made it still plays, if they still sleep in their bed, if they have been sent away or kept close. You pick it up and hold it for a moment. The wood warm from the sun, then place it gently on the fence post. The smile faces outward, toward the trees. Back in the village, the blacksmith's fire burns low. He works without speaking, shaping nails from scraps of iron. Not for horseshoes, for shutters, for ceiling doors. He wipes sweat from his brow with the back of his arm, then lowers the hammer again. Each strike rings sharper than the last. He is not afraid. He is focused. In times like this, fear wastes time. Action endures. Behind him, his daughter weaves rope from coarse flax. Her hands are cracked red. She does not look up. They've spoken already. There is nothing more to say. The priest has returned. He walks alone, barefoot, his robe streaked with ash. No candle, no book. Just a small bowl of holy water and a bundle of dried rosemary bound with cord. He touches each doorframe with water, lays the herb on the lintel and moves on. Some doors open, some stay shut. He does not knock. He leaves no words. You follow him as far as the chapel, where he pauses, looks toward the graveyard, and finally sits on the stone step. The bowl is empty. The rosemary crumbles in his hand. He does not weep, but his shoulders fall and he stays very still. A woman stands at her window, holding a length of blue wool in her hands. She does not spin it. She does not fold it. She simply holds it, letting the light pass through the threads. Oh, the wool shines faintly like water just before dusk. You wonder who it was meant for. A shawl, perhaps, or a child's blanket. A gift not yet given. Or maybe she holds it as proof that hands still make things. That warmth can still be woven, even when breath is short. You meet her eyes for a moment, and she does not look away. As night falls, smoke continues to rise. Not from pyres, not yet, but from hearths and scattered fires set outside the village, where some choose to sleep under sky rather than under roof. You find a place on the ridge again, where the wind moves more freely and the stars press low above the heather. You sit in silence, watching the valley breathe. The light shifts slowly. The world does not panic, it waits. The land has seen sickness before. It is buried and burned and endured. You are not here to solve, only to witness. Somewhere below, a song begins. Not a happy song, not meant for dancing, but a lullaby, quiet and trembling. A mother's voice, or perhaps a sister's. The words are old. Maybe Gaelic, maybe older. You cannot understand them, but they settle over you like a blanket. You close your eyes. You feel the cold air in your lungs. You hear the soft cough of a goat, the quiet crunch of frost beneath bare feet. The land is still breathing. You are still here. The morning breaks not with light, but with the absence of night. A cold gray stretches across the valley, soft and heavy like wet wool. No birds call, no hooves clatter. The world moves in small, muffled ways. Beneath your feet, the earth is frozen stiff, but not cruelly, just firmly, as though it wishes you to walk gently. You pass along a worn trail between fields lined with frost-hardened furrows. There is nothing left to harvest. The land has gone still, and yet the smell of hearth smoke rises steadily ahead, a reminder that beneath the cold, life endures. You step into the shadow of a small croft house. Low stone walls, thatched roof, a single crooked chimney. No door greets you, only a woolen curtain, stiff with youths. Inside, it is dim but warm. The fire crackles with damp peat, and steam curls from an iron pot where something thick and brown simmers slowly. A woman crouches by the hearth, her back curved, her hands wrapped in strips of cloth against the cold. She stirs with a carved wooden spoon, not hurrying, not pausing. A rhythm passed from mother to daughter, repeated more times than remembered. Behind her, a child sleeps beneath a patchwork of old linens and hides. His breath fogs the air just slightly with each exhale. His feet poke from beneath the blanket, toes curled in. The mother glances back but does not wake him. There is no need. Outside, the day will stay cold. The animals have already been fed. The bread has already risen. She knows this time, between dawn and task, between hush and hunger, and she protects it. On the far wall hangs a bundle of dried herbs. Thyme, meadowsweet, wild garlic. Not for show, not for trade. These are the house's medicine. Beneath them, nailed carefully into the plaster, is a small wooden tablet. Etched into it, faint but still legible, is a prayer in Latin, phonetically carved by someone who could not read the words but remembered their sound. Libra knows. It begins. Deliver us. You wonder if the woman still speaks it, or if it's enough to simply look at it, to trust that meaning holds, even when memory does not. She stands now and lifts a kettle from the hook above the fire. Its sides are blackened from years of use. She pours hot water into a rough clay bowl, adds barley and a handful of dried nettle, and sets it near the fire to steep. You watch her move, slowly, without waste, without hesitation. The bowl is for the child, or for the man who will return soon. She pauses only once, to glance at a crack along the wall, where the wind slips through. She pushes a strip of cloth into the gap, a small act, but meaningful. Outside again, the cold stings. The sheep in the next field have gathered near a stone wall, their breath steaming like smoke from their nostrils. A boy kneels beside them, checking hooves and scattering oats from a leather pouch. His fingers are red and cracked, his boots too thin for the frost, but he does not rush. He murmurs softly to the animals as he works. They know his voice. They do not bolt. One away noses his arm as he rises. He smiles, but only briefly. The sun has begun to break the mist, and the shadows on the snow grow sharper. Further down the slope, an old man carries firewood across a narrow bridge, just a bundle of sticks bound with rope, balanced against his shoulder. The bridge creaks beneath his feet. One of the ropes has frayed. Still he walks without fear. He has crossed it in storm, in flood, in deeper winters than this. His breath comes in slow clouds. He stops once, halfway across, and looks toward the mountains. Snow gathers along the peaks now. You wonder what he sees. A memory, perhaps, or simply weather. At the edge of the village, two women kneel by a frozen stream, breaking the ice with wooden paddles to collect clean water. Their hands are red to the wrist. They speak in low tones, not gossiping, not complaining, just sharing the morning's weight. One stops to stretch her back and points toward the tree line. A fox stands there, still as a cairn, watching. It does not run, it does not approach, it just watches. The women nod, as if in silent agreement, and return to their work. Back at the croft, the man has returned. Heavy boots, a brow damp with snowmelt. He shakes the ice from his coat and steps inside, kneeling at the hearth. He does not speak right away. He removes his gloves, lays them flat, then runs his hand gently over the child's head. The woman hands him the bowl. He takes it with both hands and eats in silence. Between them, no words are needed. This is not a house of drama. It is a house of presence. Near the hearth lies a spinning wheel, its wood worn smooth from years of touch. Beside it, a basket of unspun wool, tangled but clean. The woman moves to it after the fire has been stoked and the meal finished. She spins without looking, her feet tapping the treadle, her hands pulling the fibers into thread. The motion is slow, hypnotic. You watch her shoulders rise and fall with each pass. The rhythm seems older than the wheel itself. You wonder who taught her and who taught them? In the corner stands a single iron lamp. It does not burn now, but when it does, it gives just enough light to read by. If one has anything to read, on the shelf above it sits a carved box containing a few treasured things. A comb of bone, a cloth scrap from a wedding dress, a half-spent candle from last winter's mass. Objects with no market value but rich with memory. You lift the comb gently. Its teeth are worn down, the tip polished from years of use. You imagine the hands that once held it, braiding, parting, remembering. Do they still visit and dream? Outside again, the light has grown thin, not fading, just folding sideways through the trees. A few children gather near the bread oven, watching steam rise from its cracked dome. A teenage boy checks the woodpile, then rests a hand on the stones to feel the warmth. No one commands, no one hurries. The pace of winter is not fast. It is deep. You follow the path around the back of the croft, where a hen house leans against a stone wall, its roof patched with tar and pine branches. Inside, 3 hens settle on a shared roost, feathers fluffed. One lays a late egg, a small gift. As dusk settles, a single horn sounds from the far hill. Not an alarm, a call to return. The villagers close their doors. Smoke thickens. Light leaks from small windows. Now, the woman at the croft places a heavy blanket near the hearth and lays the child atop it. She curls beside him and pulls the blanket close. The man lowers himself nearby, leaning against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. They say nothing. Outside, the frost returns, but the fire holds. The world grows quieter, and then quieter still. The sky is pale with early light, the kind that brings no warmth, but chases the dark away all the same. You walk a narrow footpath worn into the frost, lined with last season's thistle husks and broken stems. There is no sound yet, only the faint creak of wood shifting in cold wind, and the distant splash of a stream finding its rhythm again. Up ahead you see her, bent slightly forward beneath the yoke across her shoulders. Two heavy buckets swaying from either side. Her pace is steady, not rushed, not idle. She has done this every morning since before her children could speak. The buckets are made of pine, bound with iron hoops hammered by her husband years ago. Each carries the faint smell of peat and moss. The water inside them is dark and still, reflecting the sky as she walks. She does not glance down. She knows every route along this path, every rock that might catch her toe. Her feet are wrapped in wool and tied with leather strips, her breath visible with each step. She stops once, only briefly, to shift the yoke's weight. Not with frustration, but habit. You wonder how many years it took for her to stop noticing the ache. She reaches the croft and lowers the buckets by the door, wiping her hands on her apron. Inside, the fire has caught but not yet warmed the room. A child sits on the floor, rubbing sleep from his eyes, while another curls near the hearth beneath a patched blanket. She says nothing. She pulls open the shutter slightly, lets in a sliver of light, then pours water into a wide earthen bowl. Her hands move with quiet care, washing, stirring. No instructions, no complaints. This is not a performance. This is the fabric of her life. Behind her, hanging from a nail in the stone wall, is a simple garment. A woolen overcoat dyed with heather and bark. A hem is frayed, the seams hand-stitched. A single row of decorative knots runs across the neckline, faded from sun and soap. She touches it briefly as she passes, smoothing the fabric without thought. It belonged to her mother. Or perhaps her mother's mother. Clothes in this house are not worn out. They are worn through, and still they hold. She leaves again before the sun fully rises, this time with a bundle of herbs bound in rough cloth. Down the hill, the village herb wife waits beside the bread oven, trading bundles for oatcakes and root vegetables. The two women speak only a few words. They know each other's rhythms. They share knowledge not through books, but through hands. How to press a bruise. How to steep nettle for fever. How to tell the difference between wild garlic and foxglove when the light is bad. As they trade, a dog wanders between them, sniffing at the herb bundle. She smiles faintly, and the herb wife chuckles. Along the way home, she pauses near the old well. Dry now, but once the only source of water in the glen. A wooden frame still stands over it, gray with age, its rope long gone. She touches the rim and peers inside. Only darkness looks back. Once her father fell ill drawing water here. That was the year of the fever, when the smokehouse became a sick house, and the sheep ran loose for days. She does not dwell on it. She pulls her shawl tighter and moves on. Near the path lies a carved stone basin, half filled with rain. Two children squat beside it, playing with sticks. They've dammed the water with pebbles, guiding tiny streams around clumps of moss like rivers around islands. She crouches beside them, brushing a leaf from one boy's hair, then places a smooth stone into his palm. He holds it like treasure. Her other hand touches the basin's rim, worn smooth by generations of fingers. Some say it was once holy, others say it was simply part of an older home long vanished. It doesn't matter, it holds water, it holds play. Back at the croft, she hangs laundry on a line strung between two leaning poles. The shirts are coarse, the trousers patched, the linens uneven, but each piece has been scrubbed clean by her hands in the icy stream behind the house. She rubs her fingers now, stiff with cold, and flexes them slowly. The joints ache, the nails are chipped. She dips them in a bowl of warmed tallow before returning to her tasks. Beside the fire, the children now sit with clay figures, shaping cows and chickens, placing them into a circle of stones. She glances at them, smiles but says nothing. There is no clock in this house. Time is marked by sound. The creak of the loom upstairs, the whistle of the kettle, the lowing of a cow ready to milk. She kneels beside the hearth and takes a small iron pan from the coals. Oatcakes browned at the edges crackle softly as she turns them onto a slab of bark. She cuts them with a dull knife and hands them out one by one. The children eat quietly, chewing slowly, not because they are afraid, but because they understand what food costs. She steps outside again, this time toward the edge of the field where the soil lies fallow and stiff. She kneels, places one hand flat on the earth, and breathes deeply. The dirt smells of stone and root. She doesn't speak to it, not aloud, but she thinks of planting, of seasons past, of the furrow her father once carved with a deer-bone blade. She still has that blade, wrapped in cloth, in a chest beneath her bed. It's cracked now, but the edge still holds. She runs her thumb along the ridge of the furrow and stands again. In the evening, she sits at the spinning wheel while the children sleep, her shawl pulled tight, her feet tapping a quiet rhythm. She draws thread from flax with careful fingers. The thread slips through her hand like thought, light, smooth, fragile. On a nearby shelf rests a folded piece of linen she finished last week. It's meant for her daughter's wedding someday. There is no promise of that wedding, but she spins for it anyway. Not from certainty, but from hope. Quiet, unspoken hope. The kind that lives in wool and fire and water carried before dawn. As darkness gathers, she lifts one of the water buckets from outside and pours it into the basin near the hearth. Then, with slow care, she washes her hands, her forearms, her face. The water is cold. She does not flinch. Beside the basin lies a scrap of cloth embroidered with a thistle, her own work from years ago. She uses it now to dry her face, folding it neatly afterward and placing it back where it belongs. No guest will see it. No one will praise it. But it matters. The fire burns low. The children sleep. The man of the house snores softly beside the wall. She moves to the window and draws the wool curtain aside for one last look. Outside, the sky is wide and black and unbothered. She listens. Not for wolves, not for raiders, not for danger. Just for the breath of the world. The wind answers in a hush. She lets the curtain fall. Tomorrow, she will carry the water again, and again, and again. Before the light breaks, before the frost has lifted from the long grass, before even the sheep stir in their pens, the bell rings. Low and slow, not a command, not a cry, just a sound that says, begin. You hear it roll across the hills like smoke, slipping between bare trees and over sleeping rooftops, until it reaches the old stone priory nestled at the edge of the glen. The brothers are already rising. One by one, quietly, they rise from their narrow beds and move into the cold stone corridors without words. The morning hour belongs not to conversation, but to rhythm. The monastery is small, humble, built of uneven gray stones and thick wooden beams that creak in the chill. There are no grand stained glass windows, no gilded chalices, no tapestries. Just smooth benches worn from use, clay lamps filled with tallow, and walls hung with simple crosses carved from ashwood. The air smells faintly of wax, old parchment, and smoke. You walk with them now. The monks pass the cloister garden, where the frost rests like lace over the curled leaves of cabbages and sage. No one stops to admire the plants. They have their tasks, and they know them by heart. In the chapel, the floor is cold beneath their bare feet. One by one, they lower themselves onto wooden kneelers, the creaking of joints blending softly with the wind that slips beneath the door. A younger brother lights a single candle. Its flame flickers, fragile and golden in the pale gray air. A voice rises, not strong, not practiced, but steady. Latin words chanted low, rise like breath. The others join in. No harmony, no flourish. Just the simple weaving of voices, like threads through cloth. This is how the day begins, not with plans or tasks, but with stillness given shape by sound. Near the altar lies a carved box of cedar, its lid cracked slightly along one edge. Inside are folded slips of parchment requests from the village below. A sick child, a good harvest, a safe crossing for a husband gone to sea. The brothers do not reply with words, but each petition is read aloud, slowly, and the silence that follows is long, respectful. Sometimes silence is prayer enough. One slip lies on the floor, fallen from the box. You bend to retrieve it. The writing is faint, and the hand that wrote it unsteady. There is no name, only the word. Forgiveness. After the service they scatter, not in haste, but in practiced rhythm. One brother heads toward the kitchen, where a thin oat broth simmers in a black pot over low coals. Another moves toward the scriptorium, cradling a roll of calfskin parchment against his chest. You follow the eldest, a stooped man with clouded eyes and a carved walking stick, as he steps into the workshop where tools hang in quiet order. His task is to mend. Not souls, not laws, but buckets, hinges, sandals. Faith, he would tell you, is built in repetition, in fixing what wears before it breaks. The scriptorium is warmer than the chapel. The windows are covered with scraped parchment to let in light without wind. Inside, two brothers sit at sloped desks. One copies a psalm in looping black ink, his quill scratching softly on vellum. The other sharpens a reed stylus with a bone-handled knife. A jar of ink, walnut dark and thick, sits beside him, its rim stained with use. On a nearby shelf lies a half-bound book. Its cover is calfskin, plain but carefully stitched, and its pages are lined with red rule. It is not a Bible, it is a ledger of names, births, deaths, oaths, the memory of the glen bound in quiet lines. In the center of the monastery stands a small courtyard, where rain collects in a shallow stone basin. A brother kneels there now, washing a pair of worn woolen socks in cold water. His hands move slowly, pressing the cloth, wringing it out. You watch the water ripple. It's not holy water. It's not blessed. Just clean. Just useful. The basin is chipped along one side. Moss grows in the cracks. Still, it holds. You wonder if the first mason who shaped the stone imagined that, centuries later, someone would still come here, kneel in the same place, and wash something by hand. Past the courtyard, the kitchen offers its own rhythm. The cook, broad-shouldered and quiet, stirs porridge with a wooden paddle nearly as long as his arm. He hums faintly, not a hymn, but a lullaby from his childhood. The fire pops. The oats bubble. Steam fogs the windows. He spoons the porridge into earthen bowls, lined on a narrow bench, then scatters dried seaweed flakes on top. There is no salt, no honey, just warmth. The brothers file in, one by one, taking their bowls in silence. They eat slowly, heads bowed, not in prayer, but in presence. Near the door, a wooden tablet hangs from a leather strap. It lists the day's rota, who mends, who tends, who copies, who prays. The chalk marks are faint from use. A finger runs down the list and stops beside a name. That brother is gone now, taken in the last winter, buried beneath the rowan tree near the chapel wall. His name remains. No one has erased it. You wonder if it's an oversight or something more tender? A way of saying, he's not forgotten, not yet. Outside, the light has finally come. Soft and wide, the sky is streaked with blue behind drifting clouds. You follow a younger monk as he walks the boundary path of the monastery, checking the low walls for damage from the recent storm. He stops near a section where stones have slipped. Gently, he lifts one and places it back. Then another, then another. He wipes his palms on his robe. This is not labor. This is prayer. Different kind. One that doesn't need words. Near the wall grows a single crabapple tree. Crooked and bare now, its fruit long since gathered and stewed. Beneath it, a wooden bench leans toward the earth. A book lies there, left by someone earlier. Its leather covered damp with dew, its pages fluttering faintly in the wind. You place a hand on it to still them. The page is marked with a passage from the Psalms written in soft ink. My days are like a lengthening shadow, and I wither like grass. You wonder who underlined it, and why. The bell rings again. It's midday now. The tone is different, brighter, more open. The monks return to the chapel for the short service of sext. You remain outside, watching the way the sound travels, the way birds take wing, startled, then settle again. The wind has picked up. The frost has melted. The hills beyond the glen are dusted with weak sunlight. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has shifted. That is the gift of ritual, not escape, but rhythm. You walk once more past the herb garden. Rosemary, hyssop, angelica. Much of it has withered in the frost. but someone has carefully tied straw around the roots to protect them. A small sign, hand-carved, leans near the gate. Quorum silentio. Care and silence. You touch the wood gently. It has been smoothed by rain, by hands, by time. No one watches. But still you whisper, "Thank you." The wind moves differently in this part of the glen. It carries not the scent of smoke or snow, but something older. The dry temps of lichen-covered stone, and the faint must of forgotten parchment. You walk a narrow trail that curves along a ridgeline, passing weathered boundary stones, etched with marks no one reads anymore. Not because they've faded, but because the tongue that once spoke them has grown quiet. Below, the roofs of scattered homes lean into the hills as though listening. You pause near one of the stones and run your fingers across its grooves. Spirals, knots, letters perhaps, or just memory carved into rock. Further down the slope, in the center of the old village, an elder woman sits before a fire, weaving rushes into a circular mat. Her fingers work slowly with the soft rhythm of someone who knows time is not her master. She hums something, not quite a song, not quite a chant. You listen. The tune is unfamiliar yet comforting. She's speaking to the rushes, perhaps, or to herself. When her granddaughter calls from the doorway, she answers in a tongue you haven't heard before. Not English, not Latin, but something rounder, darker, woven with long vowels and soft endings. The girl understands. She answers in the same tongue, but haltingly. Inside the home, the walls are painted with lime and decorated with simple cloth hangings. On one of them is stitched a phrase. En tui ernach, tigar. The dog that does not bark. A proverb, perhaps, or a warning. The girl traces the letters with her finger, mouthing the words. Her mother calls to her in Scots. The girl turns, replies in English. The old woman says nothing, only continues weaving. You wonder how many of her words will vanish when she does. What sound that vanishing will make, if any. You walk next to the village meeting house. Once a chapel, then a school, now neither. Inside, an old man sweeps the floor with a broom of tied birch twigs. Against one wall stands a cabinet filled with scrolls and bound ledgers, each labeled in ink gone brown with age. He lifts one, a record of fines, from the year of the Great Frost, and opens to a page lined with Gaelic names. McDomnall Macagobin, NIC. Margin note beside one name reads simply, "Now called Smith." The handwriting changes halfway down the page. You wonder what else changed with it. Behind the cabinet, a slate board still hangs on the wall. Scratched into it faintly, beneath the layers of later practice, is a poem, a prayer, perhaps, in words you cannot fully read. One verse ends with Mo Cridhai, Mo Thianga, Mo Fuel. My heart, my tongue, my blood. Someone carved it long ago, perhaps while waiting for a lesson to end, or while remembering something they feared forgetting. The man looks over your shoulder and nods. Your grandfather spoke like that, he says. Sang in it too? You ask if he does? He shakes his head. It's only in dreams, sometimes. Where I did doubt by one with I get why I want why will want why I will be why I will want I will guy I will weekend why You cross a wide stretch of moor, passing by a stream whose water runs dark and fast over slate. Along the banks lie flat stones, many stacked in little cairns. Some are offerings. Others simply balanced there, left by hands now gone. One of them bears a symbol, a single letter from an alphabet you barely recognize. You touch it and think, how many words have no one left to say them? Perhaps they still exist, in wind and song, in the long silence between names. At the edge of the moor stands a storyteller's hut. Built from turf and driftwood, its door decorated with feathers and bones. No one answers when you knock, but you enter anyway. Inside is a low bench, a hearth, and shelves filled with flat stones and carved sticks. On one wall hangs a deer hide, painted with a winding pattern of marks, not letters, but signs. A language of journey, not of speech. A brother went north, cousin wed far west, a daughter vanished near the mountain pass. This is how the story is kept, not in books, in shape. You sit on the bench and lift one of the carved sticks. It is smooth along one side, scored on the other with shallow notches, the kind used for tallying sheep or tracking moons. A forgotten calendar, maybe? Or a letter sent by firelight in memory? You close your eyes and hold the wood in your palm. It feels warm, worn by many hands. You wonder if anyone ever answered the message carved there, or if the silence, in its own way, was enough. In the afternoon, the rain begins. A soft mist at first, then heavier, soaking into the earth without sound. You take shelter beneath a bent willow tree where scraps of cloth are tied to the branches. Blue, green, yellow, pale red. A rag tree. Each cloth tied in prayer, in promise, in hope. Most are weathered now, their colors faded to near white. One new scrap catches your eye. It is cut from a shirt cuff, still marked with soot. You reach out and feel the damp fabric. Someone tied it recently. One who still believes that a wish whispered in an old tongue might carry farther in the wind. Near sunset, the clouds lift. The glen is golden and soft, and the hills seem to breathe. You pass a man carving a design into a gatepost. Not words, but loops and curves that twine like ivy. It's just pattern, he tells you. Means nothing. But he doesn't stop carving. And the pattern is careful. Repeated. Learned. You ask where he learned it? My uncle's roof beam, he says. Copied it when I was a boy. He pauses. Might have meant something once. You watch him work. The curve of the blade. The rhythm of the line. If it meant something once, maybe it still does. The last stop is a stone circle, nearly swallowed by gorse and fern. Most of the stones have fallen, but 3 still stand, tall, pitted, dusted with yellow moss. The wind whistles between them like breath. You place your hand on one, cold, rough, still. On its surface, someone has carved a spiral. Not ancient, the mark is too sharp. A child, maybe, or a pilgrim. You wonder if they knew what it meant, or if it simply felt right. To leave a mark. To say I was here. As you walk back toward the firelit village, the old woman has finished her mat. She lifts it from her lap and turns it over, checking the weave. Then she sings. Just a few lines. No one joins her. No one interrupts. The girl beside her listens quietly. When the song ends, there is no applause. Just a deeper silence than before. You pause, watching the girl lean her head on her grandmother's shoulder. You wonder not whether she'll remember the words, but whether she'll hum them one day, without knowing why. The land is colder now. Not the sharp cold of frost or wind, but a quieter kind. A stillness that settles in the bones. You walk beneath a sky the color of wet wool, across fields that lie stripped and silent, their furrows filled with old rain. The grass is sparse. The ground gives nothing. Even the birds have grown quiet, save for the crows, which circle above the treetops like slow shadows. You pass a cart left half buried near a wall. Its wheel cracked, its canvas stiff with mold. Someone meant to repair it. But winter came sooner than expected. It often does. And at the edge of the village, a woman leans against a doorframe, chewing a strip of dried bark. Her cheeks are hollow, her arms folded. She watches the road, not for visitors, but for return of a cousin, or a cow, or simply news. In her hand she holds a spindle, the thread trailing forgotten from her fingers. Her child peers out from behind her skirt, eyes wide and quiet. You nod as you pass. She does not return the gesture, not unkindly, only because nodding costs energy. A little farther on, you find a small granary, its doors sealed with rope and wax. A thin scrap of cloth nailed over the entrance. A symbol is drawn on the cloth. 2 circles, a pair of cross lines. Not Latin, not clan, Just warning. The stores are gone. You peer through a crack between the boards. Empty bins. Rat droppings. One broken scoop. Behind the granary lies a shallow pit where turnips were once buried in straw to preserve them through winter. The straw is still there. The turnips are not. Only gnawed roots remain. The earth smells faintly sour. Down near the stream, a boy kneels beside a snare. The cord is frayed. The bait is gone. He sighs and resets the trap with practiced hands, placing a shard of smoked fish at the trigger. You sit beside him for a moment. He does not speak, but his fingers work quickly. Nearby, another snare lies abandoned, torn apart, not by hunger, but by teeth. You see the tracks? Too large for a dog, too deep. You glance toward the tree line. The boy follows your gaze. You're back, he says. We heard them last night. He ties the knot tighter this time. The woods here grow thick, pine and birch packed close, their bark pale and peeling. The path narrows, the ground softens, and there, in the half-melted snow, you see the shape of it. Paw prints. Nearly the size of your palm, pressed deep into the slush. One set, then two, then four. A pack, moving slowly, confidently. They are not desperate yet, but they are watching. The forest is their silence. You feel it now, not fear exactly, but awareness. The kind that comes when something else is breathing near you. A little farther in, you come upon a midden, a pile of bones and ash, half covered in canvas. A woman kneels beside it, sorting fragments into two piles, one for fire, one for soup. Not meat, just marrow, a boiled root, a bitter herb. This is how meals are built when the stores are gone. Her hands are bare, her eyes calm. You recognize her from the midsummer feast, when she danced near the hearth fire with colored ribbons in her hair. She still wears one around her wrist. Faded now, threadbare, but she hasn't removed it. Inside her home, the walls are lined with bundles of dried nettles and a single sack of ground acorns. On the table, 2 spoons, a clay bowl, a piece of stale bread soaked in broth. She offers you none, not out of selfishness, only necessity. She breaks the bread into thirds, feeds one to her father, who sits beneath a blanket of reeds, then half of what's left to her younger brother. She takes the rest. You watch her chew slowly, carefully, as though each bite is a sentence being remembered. On a shelf near the fire lies an old object wrapped in cloth. She unwraps it carefully, revealing a horn drinking cup inlaid with silver bands. It once belonged to her grandfather, a warrior in the last raid against the neighboring valley. She polishes it with a corner of her shawl, though no one drinks from it now. He said you should always have one thing that isn't useful, she whispers, just so you remember what is. She wraps it again and returns it to the shelf. You glance at it once more. Somehow it looks warmer now. In the evening, a meeting is called in the center of the village. There is no hall, only a circle of stones near the well. People gather slowly, hoods pulled low, hands buried in sleeves. A man stands at the front. His voice is soft, but firm. He speaks of rationing, of sharing what's left, of trapping together, not alone. His words are simple, repeated. You realize he's not delivering news. He's keeping rhythm, reminding the people of their beat, their breath. Sometimes that's all a leader can do. A girl steps forward and places something on the stone before him, a piece of smoked fish wrapped in birch bark. Others begin to follow. Not many, but enough. A turnip. 2 eggs. A small sack of oats. The food is not offered with ceremony. There is no applause. No blessings. Only motion. Quiet giving. You feel it ripple through the crowd. Not relief, exactly, but presence. A whisper of, "We're still here." Night falls early. The clouds hang low. You return to the edge of the woods where the snares were set. A figure stands there. The boy again. He holds a torch, its flame flickering low. In the trap lies a rabbit, limp and gray. He bends down, checks the body, then lifts it gently, not triumphantly, just carefully. He cradles it in both hands, wraps it in cloth, and turns toward the path. You follow him without speaking. His feet do not falter. Even the trees seem to part slightly for him. Back in the village, the firelight returns to the windows, one by one. The woman with the ribbon hums a slow tune while stirring a pot. The boy with the rabbit kneels beside the hearth and begins to skin it. The mother with the spindle now weaves by moonlight, the thread tighter than before. The old man carves a new handle for a broken knife. And the girl at the well scrubs her hands with snow before drawing water. No celebration. No feast. Just motion. Just small warmth strung together. And beyond the village, past the trees, past the cairns, beyond even the reach of sound, the wolves pause. They know the paths, they know the smells, but they stay where they are for now, listening, waiting. They are not evil, not cruel. Like you, like them. Like them. Like all things that breathe beneath a cold sky and sleep with one eye open. The fire burns low, casting long shadows across the packed dirt floor. You sit on a low stool in a round house built of stone and thatch, its smoke hole open to the morning chill. The coals glow red, slow, and steady. Across from you, a man sharpens a blade with short, careful strokes. His eyes are narrowed in thought, not in anger. Beside him rests a cross carved from driftwood, smoothed with years of touch. It lies flat on a shelf beside a black stone, rounded by river water, veined with white quartz. One for Christ. One for the earth. He keeps them side by side. You watch as he finishes the blade and sets it aside. He does not test it. He knows it will cut. Then, with a kind of quiet ceremony, he lifts both the stone and the cross into a woolen pouch and ties it with a braided leather cord. He does not speak, simply sets the pouch by the door near his boots. He is a man of two vows, one to his faith, one to his clan. And sometimes when the wind comes wrong, they do not point the same way. Outside, the air is sharp with frost. A priest walks up the path, robes tucked tightly under his belt, carrying a book bound in dark leather. He stops by a broken fence post, runs his fingers along its grain, and then continues. He does not knock when he enters the roundhouse. He simply raises a hand in greeting. The other man nods and gestures toward the fire. They sit. No words for several minutes, only the sound of kindling settling. The pouch rests between them. Cross, stone, blade. You step back into the morning. Along the edge of the glen, mist clings to the bracken. A woman kneels by a row of carved stones, laying strips of fabric over the topmost one. Red, green, white, each knot tied with a whispered phrase. A child watches nearby, mimicking her movements with a string of twine. Cannot hear the words, but the rhythm is clear. She rises and traces the edge of a spiral carved into the stone. Not Christian, older. She carries a small cross around her neck as well, its leather thong nearly worn through. She wears both, speaks to both, prays to both. At the village edge, two boys chase each other with wooden sticks, pretending to be warriors from a tale. One calls out in Gaelic, the other answers in English. They laugh, then switch sides. One raises his stick and shouts a word that docently belonged to either tongue, something half-made, passed down from no place in particular. You wonder how many names live only in the mouths of children, flickering like smoke before vanishing. Words from no book, prayers from no priest, but still real, still warm. Near the chapel, a wooden bench leans against the wall. An old woman sits there, whispering the rosary with fingers worn thin. Her lips barely move. A lamb dozes at her feet, its wool damp from the grass. Beside her lies a small cloth pouch filled with dried heather and powdered bark, a charm to soothe fever. She clutches both when she prays. She sees no contradiction. You wonder if she ever did. Perhaps the cross sanctifies the charm. Perhaps the charm shelters the prayer. Perhaps it does not matter. Inside the chapel, a young monk writes by candlelight. He copies from a tattered manuscript, his quill scratching in soft, deliberate strokes. Each line begins with a red letter. Each margin holds notes in a tighter hand, corrections, clarifications, or perhaps quiet doubts. One reads, "What if the fire is not meant to consume, but too warm?" Another says only, "Too much certainty." He writes them anyway, keeps them in the margins where they do no harm. But still, he writes them. You pause beside a small well near the chapel wall. A ring of stones surrounds it, black with damp. The water is cold, and a small ladle rests nearby, carved from horn. Its handle bears a single cross, but beside it lies a pebble painted with red ochre, shaped like an eye. Someone left it there, not out of defiance, but out of care. You take the ladle and sip. The water tastes of iron and clay. You wonder how many names have been whispered into this well. To Mary, to Bridget, to something else entirely. A girl stands nearby, threading rowan berries onto a string. Each berry is punctured with a bone needle, her fingers quick and precise. She hums to herself. Not a hymn, not a song, something in between. Her mother approaches and tells her gently that the priest says charms are no longer needed. The girl nods, but she doesn't stop threading. She simply ties a tighter knot, just in case, she whispers. You understand? Just in case is sometimes all you have. Later, at the smithy, a man hammers a glowing bar of iron into shape. Sparks rise into the smoke-blackened rafters. On the wall above him, a set of iron crosses hangs beside a crescent-shaped amulet. Its surface etched with symbols no one speaks aloud. You ask if he believes in them? He shrugs. I believe in heat, he says, and in the shape of things. He plunges the metal into water and steam roars upward. That's enough most days. You nod. You believe in rhythm, too. In the hills, a shepherd ties a strip of wool around his staff, dyed blue with woad. Not a clan mark, not a holy symbol. It's just a signal, a reminder of home when the fog comes. Okay. At night, he lights a fire with 2 stones, watching the sparks dance before they catch. He places a bit of bread beside the flame before he eats. For the watchers, he says. You ask who they are. He shrugs. Old things, he says. Or just habit. Same difference. The stars rise slowly above the glen. You walk past the chapel once more. Inside, the priest prays alone, candlelight flickering across the carved face of a crucifix. Across the field, a group of villagers sits around a fire, passing a bowl of roasted roots and telling stories. A child points to the sky, naming constellations in a language the others only half remember. One is the hound. One is the wheel. One is called simply the waiting one. You look up. There are no lines in the sky, only stars. But still the names hold. And somewhere between chapel and fire, between the priest's whispered liturgy and the old woman's fever charm, between the monk's corrections and the smith's shrugged, there is a space. Not a crack, not a conflict. Just a space. A space where belief bends, where silence speaks, where names are given in more than one tongue. You walk quietly through that space, and it welcomes you. The air is still before sunrise. Not silent, just steady. Somewhere in the dark, a bird begins its call, thin and breathy, as though testing the morning. A soft wind moves across the high moor, carrying with it the faint scent of damp grass and worn wool. You walk a narrow trail worn deep into the peat, your boots brushing heather and brittle fern. Ahead, a small stone hut rises against the sky, its roof sagging, its chimney crooked. Smoke curls faintly from the hole at the top. Someone is already awake. You step quietly toward the door. Inside, an old man tends the fire with slow, practiced hands. His back is curved, his face marked with time, but his movements are careful. He adds peat to the coals, listens for the hiss, then rests his palms on his knees and watches the flame. This is Angus McTavish, shepherd, scout, grandfather, and for years, the last to keep watch when the village slept. His eyes are cloudy now, his hearing softened, but he still wakes before the stars fade. Not because he must, because he always has. Behind him, hanging on the wall, is a long woolen cloak lined with strips of stitched leather. Weatherproof. Hand-mended, older than any of the sheep he once herded. It carries the scent of heather smoke and lichen. Above it hangs a ram's horn, cracked along one side, but still whole. He touches it briefly before settling back on the stool. Sit near the hearth. He doesn't speak at first, just watches the light shift across the floor as morning creeps in. On the shelf beside him are 3 small wooden figures, a stag, a hound, and a crouching man with his hand to his ear. Each one carved long ago, whittled smooth from yew wood. He picks one up, the listener, and sets it gently on the stone ledge above the fire. He hears the wind before it changes. He says softly, "That's what my mother told me." You nod, Angus smiles faintly. I used to think he could hear the dead. He looks at the figure again, then adds, now I wonder if he just listens better than the rest of us. Outside, the sun has barely risen. The land glows with that low winter light, silver and yellow at once, spilling softly over the hills. Angus stands slowly and walks to the doorway, leaning on a gnarled staff carved with spiral knots. He gazes across the moor, lips moving silently. Not a prayer, not a song. Just names, maybe, or directions. He lifts the horn from its hook and raises it, but he does not blow. Not today. He only holds it, as if remembering its weight. Further down the hill, the village begins to stir. Smoke rises from chimneys. Doors creak open. A woman crosses the yard carrying a bundle of rushes, her shadow long behind her. Angus watches. She was born the same year the wolves took my best away, he says. She doesn't know that. He chuckles. I suppose it doesn't matter. You ask what year that was? He shrugs. The one after the old chief died? Or maybe the one after the river froze. Doesn't make much difference now. He leans against the doorframe and closes his eyes. Inside the hut, beside the hearth, a narrow box lies wrapped in wool. He opens it with care, revealing a book. Its pages thick, the corners softened with age. Inside are drawings, maps of the glen, sketches of boundary stones, a diagram of stars over the ridge. No titles, no names. It's just marks, notes, and quiet memory. One page shows a circle of footprints drawn in charcoal. Beside it a line of text. Where we waited. You trace it with your finger. The charcoal smudges slightly. He takes the book from you and flips to a folded page. My father's hand, he says, pointing to the faded ink. And mine, there. You see the difference? One tight and steady, the other broader, looser, more confident. He adds, my son never wrote in it. Didn't need to. He remembered things different. He closes the book, presses it gently between his palms, and lays it back in the box. It's not the book that matters, he murmurs. It's the looking. Later, you walk with him up the slope behind the hut, where stones mark the resting places of kin. Not a graveyard. Just a hill where cairns lean into the grass, and names are spoken quietly in winter. He points to one stone, round and smooth, unmarked but familiar. That's my brother's, he says. He left when the king's men came. Never said where he'd gone. But I found his cloak in the wood 2 springs later. So I buried the cloak here. He pauses. Sometimes things find their way home, even if people don't. You sit together on a fallen log overlooking the glen. Angus lifts his eyes to the clouds and lets the silence hold. There used to be more of us up here, he says after a while. A look out at the ridge. One in the southern wood. We'd light the torches and relay, if anything stirred. He taps the ground with his staff. No torches now, just fences. He doesn't sound bitter, only tired. He asks if you've heard the owls lately. You shake your head. That's all right, he says. They still know where to go. The wind picks up. He tightens the cloak around his shoulders and gestures toward the hut. I won't see many more winters, I think, he says. But the sheep still need watching. And the mist still rolls too fast from the east if no one's paying attention. He smiles, slow and quiet. Maybe the land doesn't need me, but it knows me, and I know it. You look around at the hills, the trees, the old footpaths worn into peat and stone. You know what he means? Back inside, he takes a worn cloth from the shelf and unwraps an old stone. Flat, circular, etched with a ring of tiny marks like teeth. A spindle whorl. My grandmother's, he says. She used it even when her hands could barely hold a cup. He runs his thumb over it slowly. I kept it to remind me what spins, what stays steady. He sets it on the table beside the fire. You'd be surprised what stays. As dusk begins to gather, Angus rests again by the fire. The wooden figure of the listener sits above the hearth. The horn hangs from its hook. The cloak stays folded. You sit beside him, neither of you speaking, the light fading slowly across the stone floor. Outside, the first owl calls. A second answers. The wind has quieted. The land breathes gently. And when the fire burns low, Angus leans back and closes his eyes. Not to sleep. Not yet. Just to rest. His lips move silently once more. A name, perhaps, or a memory. Then stillness. The kind of stillness that holds nothing back, not resistance, not sorrow. Just the fullness of a life quietly watched, gently carried, and now slowly folded into the earth. The river doesn't speak, not like it used to. Its surface moves softly now, not swift, not cold, just quiet. You walk beside it at daybreak, where the frost still curls along the banks and the reeds bend without complaint. There was once a time when this river flooded with each spring thaw, carving deep channels through field and pasture, swallowing fences and footpaths with a roar. Now it trickles in places, hesitates, changes course without warning. The villagers say it's forgotten its way. You wonder, can rivers forget, or do they simply grow tired? You follow the bend past a clump of elder trees where children used to play. The rope swing still hangs, worn and frayed, but no footprints press the mud beneath it, just leaf fall and time. Someone has tied a blue ribbon around the branch above. Not new, but not old either. Quiet marker. You reach up and touch the ribbon. It holds firm. You wonder who placed it, and whether they did so for joy or remembrance, or both. In a village like this, celebration and grief often wear the same face. Further downstream, the old crossing stones remain. Flat, slick with moss, placed long ago when no one could afford to build a bridge. The largest stone is cracked down the center, split by winter ice, a decade past. Still, people use it, 1 foot at a time, arms outstretched. You watch a boy do just that now, his dog trotting behind him. He jumps the last stone and lands in the grass, laughing quietly to himself. His voice carries down the river and is lost almost immediately. The water takes everything eventually, even sound. Along the opposite bank, a woman digs in the mud near the roots of an old tree. Her hands are red with cold. She works patiently, pulling out cattails and washing the roots in the current. These will dry on her windowsill, ground later into flour. Not much, but enough. A cloth bundle sits beside her. Within it, a small bronze brooch shaped like a spiral. She found it here last spring, cleaned it, kept it. Today she wears it pinned to her shawl. A found thing, a carried thing. It holds no name, but it holds weight. A little farther on, you come to the place where the river once forked, back when the east field still grew flax and the reeds grew thick enough to weave. That fork is gone now, filled with gravel and silt from seasons of storm. In its place, a thin trickle, barely a stream, lined with wild mint and broken fencing. Dull, an old man stands nearby, tossing pebbles into the water without aim. "Used to fish here," he says. "Brown trout, thick as your arm. My uncle swore they could speak Gaelic." He smiles faintly. Maybe they still do, just no one's listening. Near his feet lies a rusted horseshoe, half buried. He digs it out with the heel of his boot and holds it up to the light. "Lucky," he says, though without much conviction. Then he pockets it anyway. Some things are worth keeping, even when their luck is long spent. He turns and walks back toward the village, his gait uneven but steady. You watch him disappear over the rise. The horseshoe leaves a dark print on his tunic. In the afternoon, you sit beneath a willow that leans hard toward the water, its roots half exposed, its trunk bent like an elder, stooping over a story. Hanging from the branches are thin strips of cloth, most faded pale by sun and rain. Prayer flags, some say wishes or promises. One is made of lace. One is from a tartan scarf. Another bears a name written in charcoal. Elspeth. You wonder if she still lives in the village, or if her name is now carried only by water and air. Near the base of the tree is a carved wooden bowl, split along one edge, but still resting upright. Inside lie 3 smooth stones, pale gray, nearly identical, except for one with a single line etched across its face. A mark of something, a date, perhaps, or just a memory. You pick it up. It warms in your hand despite the chill. Then you return it to the bowl. Not everything needs to be taken. Some things are meant only to be touched, then left behind. Further downriver lies the ruined mill. The wheel is gone, but the stone walls still stand, damp with moss, the mortar crumbling in places. Inside, wild flowers grow through the floorboards, and a pile of rusted gears sits in the corner. A child has placed feathers along one of the windowsills, blue, white, black, arranged like petals around a stone. Quiet arrangement, no message, no explanation. His care. You pause in the doorway. You can hear the river through the cracks in the wall, but it sounds distant here, as though it has nothing left to say. Back outside, you sit beside a flat stone warmed by the brief sun. A figure approaches. A woman, perhaps 40, carrying a basket of willow switches and wet linen. She stops to rest, lowering the basket to the ground. "It's changing again," she says, nodding toward the river. "Used to flood here. Now it barely comes near." You ask what will happen? She shrugs. "We'll move the fence, same as always." She looks out toward the water, then adds, "Nothing here stays, but everything returns." You walk a little farther and reach the place where the river meets the edge of the forest. There the trees rise dense and high, the water moving faster between their roots. On one low branch someone has tied a bell, small brass. It moves slightly in the breeze but doesn't ring. You stand beneath it, listening. Not to the bell, but to what surrounds it. The creak of trees, the murmur of the current, the distant call of a rook. You wonder who hung it, what sound they hoped to hold on to, and whether just once it rang clear in the rain. Evening comes slowly, stretching itself over the hills like wool pulled thin. You return along the path past the stones and the willow, past the faded names and flooded silences. The village comes back into view. Lights flickering in small windows, smoke rising in threads. A boy and girl chase each other across a muddy yard, laughter rising like steam. The river runs behind them, silver now in the dusk, soft and forgetful. At the footbridge you pause. The stones beneath your feet are uneven but familiar. You cross slowly, carefully, as the sky shifts from blue to ash. You think again of the brooch, of the bell, of the stone with the line across its face, of the water's endless movement, of what it remembers and what it lets go. Maybe forgetting isn't a loss. Maybe it's a way of carrying, which is lighter. The morning is soft, not warm, not bright, just soft. A quiet gray rests over the glen like breath held between dreams. You walk once more along a familiar path, the moss-covered stones. The bend near the old well, the crooked gate that opens to the east field. Nothing has changed. And yet everything feels slower, gentler, as if the land itself is easing into memory. The air smells of ash and lichen. A bird calls once briefly, then stops. It is not silence. It is rest. You pass the croft house with the wool curtain and the patchwork blanket. Smoke rises from its chimney in a steady ribbon. Inside, the fire has already been fed, and a woman hums softly while spinning flax at the wheel. Da-da-da-da. Her child sleeps curled beside her, face turned toward the warmth. She does not speak. She does not need to. Her rhythm continues. Steady, slow, necessary. You pause at the door, listening to the creak of the treadle, the brush of her hands through the fiber. It is not just thread, it is memory made visible. Farther on, the chapel bells ring. Not sharply, not in summons. Just once, low and round, like a breath drawn slowly in. The village priest stands by the door, not in robes, but in wool and linen, hands clasped behind his back. He nods as you pass. A page of scripture flutters at his side, pinned beneath a smooth river stone. On it is written, "Blessed are those who remember the small things." You don't stop to ask what verse it is. The words are enough. Near the old stone cross, a girl places a single berry at its base. Rowan, red and bright, shining against the pale lichen. Her fingers tremble slightly, but her expression is still. She kneels for a moment, then stands, brushing her hands on her skirt. No one told her to do it. She simply did. Perhaps for someone, perhaps for herself, perhaps for no reason at all, but knowing it mattered. The berry sits there, quiet and bright, a small defiance against forgetting. By the stream, the wind lifts. You watch it ripple through the dry grass, rustling the reeds where once cattails stood thick and full. A boy wades carefully through the shallows, retrieving a snare left overnight, nothing caught. But he checks the loop, resets it with fresh bait, and places a flat stone on top, not to weigh it down, but as a marker. You wonder if someone taught him that, or if it was something he figured out by watching the river. Back! People forget that the land teaches too, just not in words.
Yeah.
You walk once more past Angus McTavish's hut. The fire no longer burns. The horn remains in its place. The cloak is folded. But the wooden figure of the listener still rests above the hearth. You reach up and touch it gently. It is smooth, warm from the rising sun. He is gone now. But the hills still hold his shape, the footpaths his stride, the stories his rhythm. Nothing here disappears. It simply folds back into the earth. In the field below, two brothers mend a fence with twine and cedar posts. They work without speaking, but their motions are mirrored, as if the task were a dance passed down from father to son. One lifts a hammer, the other braces the wood, the twine pulls tight. You wonder how many fences have been mended this way, how many tools passed from hand to hand without ceremony. A hammer is just a hammer, until it becomes a memory. At the edge of the glen, beneath a tree marked with cloth and carved initials, a woman sits with her back against the bark, weaving a cord of nettle fiber. Each twist is careful. Her eyes are closed. A child nearby hums a tune you've heard before. Something without words, sung around fires, hummed while stirring pots or braiding hair. The melody lingers in the air like dust in sunlight. She opens her eyes and ties off the cord. Then she hands it to the child, who wears it like a crown. You wonder if the tune will stay in the child's mouth for years to come, even if they forget why. You pass again the rag tree by the river. More cloth has been added. A strip of red wool, a child's mitten, a thin braid of horsehair. The wind plays through them softly, each one a whisper, each one a wish, and none of them asked to be remembered, only to remain. You pause and tie your own offering, a length of thread from the spinner's wheel tucked into the bark with care. No name, no reason, just presence. The river continues on its path, slower now in places, but still moving. You follow it toward the lowland fields where sheep graze in the shadow of the hills and a stone wall snakes quietly across the land. Along that wall, carved in its oldest corner, are marks, spirals, notches, faint crosses, weather-worn and fading. You run your fingers along them and think, someone's hands once touched this same stone. Maybe they stood right where you are now. Maybe they wondered if someone like you would ever come. The sky grows pale blue. Morning deepens. In the field, someone sings while turning the soil with a wooden plow. Not loudly. Not for an audience, but because the motion feels right with a song beside it. The earth breaks in smooth lines. A robin follows, pecking at worms. This, too, is memory. Not written, not spoken, but lived, bent back, steady hands, warm breath in the cold. But is enough. You pause beside the old boundary stone, the same one from the beginning. Its grooves worn soft by centuries of wind and rain. You place your palm on its face once more. Spiral is still there. Not clear, but present. You close your eyes. You listen. The earth beneath you holds stories that no longer have voices, but still shape the paths we walk. Perhaps your footstep today will be the groove someone traces 100 years from now. Perhaps it already has been. And as the light rises fully, and the smoke from breakfast fires blends with the mist, you take one last look across the glen. The people here do not speak of legacy, do not ask what will last. They do not cling. They move, they tend. They pass things on without always knowing they've done it. A phrase, a bowl, a way of folding cloth, a prayer without words. A lullaby, half remembered, a stone beside a river. Maybe we haven't changed as much as we think. Thank you for being here. Sweet dreams.